What's next? Whatever it is, it's coming at us faster every day from every corner of the globe. What's next isn't where it used to be. It's everywhere else, and it's relentless. Some companies think what's next only happens through R&D or acquisitions. For them, what's next might be fatal. The most innovative companies are partnering with startups to do more with less, to hack problems, and to unlock growth. The most innovative companies turn to venture fuel to solve their corporate challenges with innovative solutions. Our global innovation network includes over 500 leading venture capitalists, universities, accelerators, and angel investors. Heck, even our scouts have scouts, which is why at any given time, we have eyes on up to 2 million vetted startups around the world. But you don't care about 2 million startups. You care about the ones that can solve your problem, which is why we don't give you lists. We deliver custom vetted solutions. So whether you want to transform innovation across your company, or solve an immediate challenge with tangible results, or simply discover what's possible, Venture Fuel helps you inject innovation to stay ahead of the pace of change. What's next? What's next is now.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Fred Schonberg. I'm the founder of Venture Fuel. And today we're going to be talking about what's next in the travel and tourism and hospitality worlds. We have an unbelievable group of speakers and we'll get to them very quickly. I just wanted to elaborate a bit on what you saw in the video there in terms of Venture Fuel and what we do. So let me just share my screen with you. Here we go. We're going to start off this morning talking with Kevin from Southwest Airlines, and then we will get into an unbelievable panel with two startups that are disrupting the space. As you saw in the video, Venture Fuel, I founded it 8 years ago. The whole thinking behind it was, how can we help industry leaders innovate faster through startup collaboration? And why is that important? If you think about today, the sort of the circle to the left there, the now, right? Most large companies are very focused on their core. And that is how they've grown to where they are. And that is where most of their staff are focused. But there are now emerging markets happening, adjacent markets that are new. And then, of course, the future markets, which is next. And this is a way to think about a framework, right, of the different horizons of today, tomorrow, and the future. And the truth is, we're all being asked to do more with less. And so even as you continue to grow your core business, you need to look to potential disruptors and innovators and turn them into collaborators. And that's what Venture Fuel does. We do it with some of the biggest companies in the world. The stat that we're most proud of is that 80% of our clients renew year over year. And we believe that is because of our focus, which is on delivering tangible results through innovation. We have 3 core products. Our diagnostic, this is really an assessment of where you are, looking at benchmarking versus peers and other companies that are doing it well, and taking those learnings and injecting them back into your organization. Think more organizational structure. Our pilot excellence program, this is an amazing way to inject innovation into your organization. We look at business challenges that are tangible and real to your business today, and we go out and find startups and new technologies that can solve those problems for you. And we run those pilots to get you sort of quick learnings, competitive advantage, and results into new growth areas. And lastly, our accelerator project. This is where you're looking to build. So running a custom corporate accelerator that brings the best startups in the world in to work with you on future solutions. So one of the things that we mentioned in the video and that you'll see today is we spend a lot of time looking at what's next. The best startups all around the world. We find them through investors, many of whom are here today, angel seed to VCs, as well as university labs. And we really vet through the best of whatever makes sense for our corporate clients. So travel is and tourism is an area that is incredibly ripe with innovation. So I thought what I'd do is share with you a few startups that our team has identified as kind of coming in and creating something new that could be additive to the industry. So I'll roll through a few of these and then we'll get right to our panelists. Troop is extremely interesting. This is the idea of perfecting the group trip, whether that is, you're traveling with family members that are on different coasts to a family vacation, whether it is, sort of your friends getting together to go somewhere for a special occasion. It can be a real challenge to pick out where you're going, coordinate all the details and the pricing and all of that. Troop kind of cuts through that with a very friendly user interface that enables you to sort of group plan. Obviously, for the businesses involved in travel and hospitality, this is incredibly interesting as a lead source, and also to identify if you have 10 travelers and one's booking everything, you might be able to get the information on that one, but what about the other 9? So it's a way to bring everybody in and sort of build your database as well. Here is another very interesting company. This is location-based audio stories for road trips. Kevin Costner is actually a large investor in this company. And the idea is, when you go somewhere new, you're always kind of looking at, why is this relevant? Is there a story about this place? Is there a reason for being? And these are truly great deep stories based on the cultural importance or the geography importance of the area, historical, mythological, and it's a way to make your trip come to life, to create almost a soundtrack to where you are visiting. The third we'll feature today actually is one of our speakers in the second panel. Pink Tata is transforming hotel booking by enabling the tokenization in the travel market. I won't say much more than this just because we're going to get a lot of depth in the panel later. But to me, this is really the heart of what Venture Fuel tries to get after, is how new technology can transform an industry, remove friction, and create new value. So very interesting. Similarly, StayOpen, which is part of the StayDAO, will be on the second panel. And they've created pod hotels to take advantage of this digital nomad, right? In repurposed buildings, all the while they are contributing back to people that are unhoused. So they have both a mission, right, that is very admirable, but they're solving for a new trend of consumer that didn't really exist, this digital nomad, and utilizing space that is being unutilized. So 10 years ago, this would have been the Uber of, right, the sort of digital nomad lifestyle, but a fascinating company. We can't wait to kind of dive in more on the second panel. We have 2 more examples for you. Bags ID is solving a problem I think all of us have had that have traveled, which is the sort of headache of our luggage. First off, dropping it off, then did it get loaded? Is it on the plane? How do we get it back? Does it need to be delivered somewhere, right? All these things are steps that are filled with friction, both for the traveler, the consumer, but also for the airline, for the airport, for the staffing, especially now as staffing has become more challenging. So Bags ID is a very sort of elegant and simple solution that can unlock a lot of value for all involved. And the last startup that I'll share with you is called Booking.Dentist. This is almost more of a trend spot rather than an individual company. But the idea here is there's a tremendous amount of folks that do medical travel, medical tourism. They're traveling to a destination to have some sort of procedure done. Booking.Dentist focused specifically on the dental world, which we thought was interesting that as a niche was large enough to sort of motivate this company to come into being, but a very interesting niche and segment to think about as you think about the different aspects of travel and hospitality and consumers that you can serve. So those are a few of the startups that we were most excited about in this space. But what we'd like to do is bring in an expert here to chat with us about it. So Kevin, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
I welcome to the stage and the show. And I thought maybe we could start if you could just kind of introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do at Southwest.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. So Kevin Kleist, Southwest Airlines. I lead our emerging trends practice at Southwest. So I get to have fun every day and really look for and identify what are some of those kind of emerging technologies, newer technology, newer technologies that are not only in our industry but across several industries, and just understanding how do they work, how are they being applied, um, finding unique ways in which people are using the technologies, and really taking that and bringing them back and learning as much as we can, gaining key insights from these startups and technologies, and really starting to understand the viability of a product, and the risks that might be associated with it, and then hopefully connect the dots and meet some different challenges and use cases we have at Southwest, and hopefully some of those startups and technologies can solve some of those for us today.
I, I love it. I mean, I think travel feels to me like it has been for a couple of years, but that it's being transformed by technology in so many different ways. How do you stay in front of all these different technologies, and then even think about collaborating with them in something that is, an industry that's highly regulated? Obviously, there's a lot of scale. You guys have a lot of moving pieces. Just curious how you start to think about finding these opportunities.
Yeah, good question. We're the way we kind of set up is we're both proactive and reactive in that sense. So we're being reactive to the operations or the business here at Southwest. When somebody comes to us with a challenge or a unique use case where it's like, hey, we're really trying to help solve for this, and looking for some help, and so that gives me some of the fuel to go out and find the right technologies or companies that are out in the world today that we could work with. And then there's the proactive side, and working with different partnerships and that I have, and just different folks around the building. It's really just understanding what's happening across some of these different industries. Where do you see where do you see investments taking place? Where there's a lot of money being invested in different areas and technologies, and so having kind of those partnerships out in those spaces today really allows them to kind of help bring in some of those technologies and startups for me to kind of review and explore and look at and just stay ahead of the game, because it's hard just for a team of myself right now and a few others to be out in the world and sensing and scanning everywhere. So we rely on a lot of partnership to help us identify some of those areas that we can explore and see what possibilities exist for Southwest.
Are there any emerging trends or areas that you're particularly excited about or watching right now that you could use as an example, perhaps?
Yeah, one that I excites me is the advanced air mobility space. So flying taxis is kind of how I explain it to everybody. The vertical takeoff and landing vehicles that people are talking about, and be able to carry people through the city that way, or connect cities to airports, or there's even the possibility of connecting airports to airports. So there's this new space that's you're seeing a lot of investment in. You're seeing a lot of companies start to explore, and so it's fun and unique, because I think it will be a different way to travel in the future, and I think it's going to be a reality. It's just a matter of when at this point, given the regulations and some of the hurdles you have to overcome, and building out the infrastructure. But it's a cool space, and it's one that's fun to explore, from a true travel perspective. But some others that are fun that are out there, it's looking at crypto and NFTs and biometrics, and I can name a ton. But it's there's a lot of fun stuff out there that I think is going to help drive and change the travel industry moving forward.
It's funny when you said vertical takeoff, like all I could think of was Back to the Future, where he's like, where we're going, we don't need roads, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need the tarmac and all that goes with it.
Right.
If that takes hold, how do you balance this? Right, there's so many aspects of travel that you mentioned biometrics, right? I remember the first time I spoke with you, most of our conversation was around like flight attendants, and like what they were wearing and metrics and tracking and all the stuff. And I was like, whoa, I was thinking airplanes, right? When like at first, and there's so many, you've got food on board, you've got getting people through faster, safer, then you've got all the technology of the airplane. How do you focus on which area you guys want to kind of pay attention to, right? Because you've got the sort of like Horizon 3+ of a vertical taxi, flying taxi. But then also there's maybe closer to implementation biometrics that you could look at. How do you kind of balance that?
Yeah. That's a hard one because, we, in our role, we want to be thinking about the future and knowing what's going to come and what's down the road. But we've got some really good, coming out of the pandemic, some really good goals that have been established from our CEO, Bob Jordan, and really understanding we need to stabilize and then we need to modernize. And so when you break it down in that way, you can really start to focus on, okay, what can we do to stabilize right now, get us back to where we were pre-pandemic, and what does that look like? And it's how do we drive some incremental change now to support that? And then as you kind of step into that, it's okay. Once we're at a good point, how do we start to modernize? How do we start to get to the next level? And what does that look like? So we've got some key focus areas and we have to kind of stay within those themes. And I think staying within those themes helps guide us in where we need to go and where we need to prioritize. But at the same time, we have to be thinking and looking down the road, and we have to be understanding what's coming. How is it going to affect us? Where can it play a part in the airline? So we've got some key focus areas and themes that we stay within, but we also kind of we like to explore a bit and sometimes bring in some of these unique technologies that people aren't quite ready to do much with or don't quite understand. But it's fun to kind of to mix the two and start to really think about what Southwest can be as we start to come out of things.
Yeah, it's really interesting when we do projects with our clients. We're very focused on what is the the KPI, the tangible outcome, and kind of commercializing innovation. But we always do include a wild card. So it's sort of like, here's what it will solve, what we need to solve. Oh, and by the way, here's the one that probably won't go anywhere, but it should
Yep.
be on your radar, right? Because I think
Yep.
even just getting exposure to some of those ideas is extremely valuable as you start to think about the modernizing piece. Well, so this is probably a hard question, but one of the things we hear every day, right, is testing new tech is fairly easy, but scaling it is hard. How do you think about that? The sort of, I'll call it, path to commercialization. And I don't know if you have a specific example of something that has been successful out of your group, or even just sort of hypothetically, as something that went from that sort of like, okay, let's see if this has legs, to, oh, this could really scale across the organization.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest. That's the hardest part of any company trying to do this is how to scale. And I think it's still hard, and it's always going to continue to be hard. But I think it's, from our perspective, it's what I do is making sure that when I'm doing this testing and when I'm gaining these insights, it's making sure I have the right people engaged here internally. So having a technology partner and an architect that really understand how this is going to fit within the platform, or how this is going to fit within the architecture of Southwest and our technology. Having our operations folks in the room at the same time, so they understand how this can affect them and how this can play a role. Having our labor and our legal and our supply chain, everybody's engaged and everybody's along for the ride as we learn. And I think is in doing that, people start to ask the right questions. They start to understand how this is going to touch their systems or their people. And so when you get to the point to scale, it's an easier conversation because now you've got a larger group that understands it. They know kind of where this needs to fit in their priority, how they need to focus on this effort. And so it's important to bring the right people along for the journey. So it's as simpler and easier to scale. But it's always hard, anything you bring in, to just bring in a new technology and get it out the door. So I found it easier as long as you're bringing the right people along that journey. It's going to make it simpler as you try to push it through the right channels.
I love it. We give advice a lot with the founders too, about saying, hey, not only do you need to execute on what is being asked of you, but you have to capture the results of it, and work with the champion, right? The person that brought you in, to figure out how to share that and make it. It needs to be a no-brainer, because it's new and different. So that means people have to stop what they're used to in order to bring this in. So they have to be able to see that the juice is worth the squeeze to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a question for you, a two-part. One is, what advice would you have for other leaders at travel organizations, large companies that are trying to begin this journey, right? This transformation and exploring new technologies. And then I'll save the second question for in a minute.
Yeah. It's, I think what worked really, really well from our perspective was, one was really just to establish and we created just what really understanding where we're going to play in this world and how we're going to play in this world, and really putting kind of together a really good kind of model of where we see ourselves succeeding and working with these newer technologies and these startups, and why that's important to us. And then taking that and really just sitting down with our executive leadership and really having just good candid conversations, understanding why it's important, why we feel like it's, we should open our doors and bring some of these companies in. And so I think it really helped to get, kind of from the top down, really understanding why it's important to explore and have that buy versus build conversation.
Yeah.
And I think in doing that, we got a lot of people on board, and they really understand why it's important, because now we can test it, we can learn from it. We're not just diving in and hoping it works. We can understand if it's going to work and ask the right questions. And I think that's what it helps a lot, and has driven the success of this team and moving some of this new technology forward.
We need like a third B, right? Like you got buy and build. Like I wish there was something in between those two, right? Where it's like, I don't know, it's like test, collaborate, like something where like before you buy, like let's go on a couple dates with the startup and see that it works.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any ideas, put it in the chat for a third B, because that's what I love about what you're doing, is that it's sort of in between those, where you guys can find new solutions and kind of start on third base, because they've already been out there building it and kind of going through the pivots and the trials and tribulations by the time that you get an opportunity to kind of commercialize and pilot it and see if it works for you. So
yeah, that's a good one.
The second question I had was, what would be your advice to startups or new technologies that want to work with somebody like a Southwest? I mean, I think from what we've heard from them, right? It's hard to know who to approach. It's hard to know how to approach them. How do you cut through? How do we work with them? Like there's a myriad of challenges that you've heard. So just curious, if you were giving advice to somebody listening that had something interesting, how would you guide them?
Yeah, it's what I've told several before. It's startups, they move so fast, and it's amazing how smart these folks are and the things they come up with and how quickly they can iterate. But they have to understand that large organizations, we're slow to adopt. We're conservative in a lot of aspects, and we're not as quick. And I think they have to understand that and be comfortable. It's a journey sometimes, and during that journey, we want to partner across that journey. We want to explore together. We want to learn together, and we want them to understand that we can't always just like that get it out the door, and we have to really make sure this is going to be viable and identify all the risks, and it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And I think as long as they're willing to understand that sometimes it's a journey, usually you have a pretty good partnership, and we're here to support them. We understand it's a startup too. We want them to be successful, because if they're successful, ultimately that's going to make us successful as well. So we just have to continue to partner throughout that journey and make sure they understand that sometimes we have to move a little slower, which, especially in the airline industry, we tend to move a little slower than others.
Yeah, we did had a similar conversation in the fintech industry, talking to some of the large banks, and I thought it was a great line. Was one of the reasons, it was from the CIO at HSBC. She said, "There's a reason that we move slowly. like it's to avoid moving too quickly, right there. The
Hmm.
machine is built to protect
Yeah.
data, consumers, lives in your case, and
Yeah.
so patience needs to be part of the game, which is hard for founders. But I thought
Yeah.
that was great. I love this question. So everyone listening, please drop questions in the chat. I'd love for the rest of this time with Kevin to come from you. There's one that I thought was really well stated, which is, as one of the most loved consumer airline brands in the US, what role does innovation play in differentiating and continuing to surprise and delight your customers?
A great question. I think we have to continue to really understand our customer needs and what's important to our customers. And for instance, self-service and a seamless customer journey through check-in, TSA, getting on the plane, and just providing the tools and technology that they need to ensure that they have a successful trip and to ensure that they feel loved along the way, they feel safe along the way, but also the people are there to help too if they need it. And I think we have to really we're trying to do a really good job of how do you use tools and technology to really support the customer journey and to support their needs. And so I think in doing that, you are surprising and delighting customers because they know that they have that self-service. They can travel how they feel comfortable traveling. They can travel knowing they feel loved by Southwest, and we're here to support them. And at the same time, it's knowing who our customers are. So there's technology that if we can identify maybe who's sitting in a particular seat, we could say happy birthday, or we could just offer them a free drink. It's as simple as that, or just saying hi. And I think some ways we can innovate with some of these technologies will allow us to start to have some of those conversations and learn more about our customers and make sure that their travel journey is as seamless, as fun, as safe as possible. And so I think there's a lot of cool things we can do to help with that.
Very cool. This is sort of the flip side of the same question. With all the pressure on companies to achieve sustainability goals, how are you thinking about or approaching environmental innovation in aviation?
Yeah. We, earlier this year, maybe late last year, we created a team focused on sustainability for Southwest, and so we've got a great team now that's put together some really ambitious goals, and working to understand what sustainable aircraft fuel can do for Southwest, understanding what those opportunities for us are when it comes to SAF. Also looking at how we manage carbon offsets, and so we've got a really unique plan today where customers and loyalty members can actually help pitch in and put some money towards some of those carbon offsets that will then match and help as well. So there's a great team dedicated to it, and I do help support and provide some direction, or even introduce them to some companies that are doing some innovative things in that space that could help us meet some of our goals as we're working to focus on sustainability and become carbon neutral and manage that over the next decade or so.
Very cool. Can you share, and I'll add to this, share any emerging companies or tech that you all have invested in? And I will preface that by saying it doesn't have to be invested in, partnered with, or any emerging companies, tech stories from collaborations with Southwest. Is there anything you're sort of proud of that you guys have done that you'd like to share with everyone?
A good question. My team is very new, so we only got set up for 2 years ago. Is kind of established this team, so we are fairly new and playing in the space when it comes to this emerging side of things. I will say right now there's several that companies we are working with. Can't talk to who and what, but there are some really unique startups and technologies kind of in the AI computer vision space that we're doing a lot of cool things with that I think are going to we're going to look on how potentially we could scale those, to the question earlier, and work through that. But I think they're going to provide a lot of good opportunities for Southwest going forward. So I know they didn't answer the question, but we're a new team, so we're starting to think through what that looks like, what investment versus partnerships look like, and what the best approach is for Southwest. But right now, I think we've got a lot of good things we're testing and learning about that we feel like there are some good opportunities to ingest those into the airline and work with them going forward.
It's funny. It's one of the hardest questions, I think, and it sounds so easy. Like, give me a case study, and
Yeah.
we get it, right? Because our clients, a lot of the partnerships that we facilitate are competitive advantage, right? Like, they're new to market, new to world, and they don't necessarily want to share all those or can. So I completely hear you. Let me see if we have time for one more here. This is interesting. What risks are involved in shaking up people's travel plans with new innovations in an environment where people usually don't want any change that may disrupt their travel plans? So my mind was very much like new technologies, innovation to make your travel experience better. But trying something new and different when you're on your way to a flight may be viewed as an impediment. How do you think about those risks, or maybe that pushback?
Yeah, good question. When we're doing something, I always tell people if we want to solve for, we have to solve for my dad, who my dad hates technology and change, and he likes to have the paper boarding pass. So, there are things we can do to make travel better, more efficient, and simpler for our passengers, but we have to design around the person. We have to take an approach and use empathy to really understand what our customers need, what they want, and design solutions around those customers to support them. So, taking an empathetic approach and really understanding the customer and what their needs are and what those solutions are that we can build to support them is kind of how we think about it. So we want to make sure we just don't go in there and change and blow their mind and now they don't feel comfortable traveling. So it's a fine balance, because you want to grow and you want to expand and you want to do more from an innovation perspective to improve upon things, but you ultimately have to make sure that the people are the core, and you're thinking about their needs and their wants and what's going to work for them ultimately in the end.
Absolutely. Well, I'll get you out of here on this. What do you think? It's 2030. What do you think we would be surprised about in the way that travel has evolved? Is there anything that you're like, you know what, I think we're in flying taxis? Anything? I'm just curious what your future gazing would show us.
We're all going to be riding in trains.
We're all going to be on trains. Southwest trains, though.
Yeah, right. No, I think 2030. That's a good one. I think you're going to see a lot in just the sustainability space. I think you're going to see a lot of airlines doing sustainable aviation fuel. You're going to see a lot with the carbon offsets, and these aircrafts are going to be able to meet some of the goals that we've set out to help the environment. And I think that's an important piece of it. But I think in the 2030 timeframe, you will start to see some of these companies with these vertical takeoff and landing vehicles out there, in the world being used. And I think might not be here in the U.S., could be over in Asia or Europe, but I think you're going to start to see some of those popping up here over the next several years, especially around 2030. You'll probably start to see more of those kind of taking flight and trialing those out. So I think that will start to shift some travel demand and the way people think about travel in that time frame. But I think there's going to be a lot of good incremental change over the next several years to get there, and I think there's a lot of potential out there within our industry, at least, and especially to support and provide a better customer experience.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I really appreciate your time and for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over now to Vanessa Rosado, who will take us to our next panel.
Thanks, Fred. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is my pleasure to introduce our second panel for this afternoon, which is Hospitality Innovation, and to welcome our two panelists, Ilana Grossman, co-founder and CMO of Pinktata, and Steve Spilsky, co-founder and CEO of StayOpen and StayDown. Welcome.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here. I want to jump in with whenever we have founders, and we love to have these conversations at the intersection of where corporates, investors, and founders are engaging and interacting with one another. But my first question is always, what is your elevator pitch, right? Pingtada, StayOpen, what problem are you trying to solve? And why is your organization uniquely positioned to solve it? Ilana, would you like to go first?
I'm happy to go first. So Pingtada, we are a hotel marketing and reservations travel platform that is architected on tokenization. And that's the first off. If you think about hotel booking, it really hasn't evolved in the last 25 years, right? With the big OTAs coming, online travel agencies. And so there's such a deficit of like space for innovation and opportunity. And the blockchain technologies enable us to solve one particular problem, which is if you look at the pricing structure of the industry, it's been binary for decades now, right? So we have a non-refundable reservation that offers the traveler the best possible price, but takes away his or her flexibility, right? And by the same token, the hotels, if they have a non-refundable reservation, they're settling for a lower price, but they're able to really have stability in terms of revenue forecast. They know how much they're getting, and hotels really need to optimize from a risk perspective towards a certain share of non-refundable reservations. So that model now with tokenization, we make sure all the pieces are connected, different people connected to one another, and we transform a space that has been very opaque, full of intermediaries that have been taking slices of the pie into a very transparent marketplace that really allows parties to directly transact and a lot more transparency for the space as a whole. That was a long elevator ride, but hopefully still safe in an elevator.
Going to like the 40th floor, so your elevator pitch was the right amount of time.
There you go. It's good for New York City.
Well, when you think about, I mean, there are so many variables that have enabled or facilitated an idea like that, not the least of which, you know, the past 2 years with COVID and hotel operators needing to manage room night inventory, providing flexibility, but at the same time, I mean, I know, for example, I'm going on vacation next week. I'm staying in a hotel for the first time in a very long time because I've canceled so many trips in the last 2 years. So, you know, it's very interesting, but then that coupled with Web3 and the democratization and really the empowerment of the traveler to participate in that marketplace exchange. Steve, with that, I want to move to you because this idea also of the democratization of travel, the empowerment of the traveler, you're looking at, can you talk to us about StayOpen and also StayDAO and why, you know, what your elevator pitch is, but also why you're uniquely positioned to solve this opportunity for digital nomads in this new era that we're all entering. I can't even say post-COVID, right? The next evolution of COVID or the next evolution of the world, which sounds dramatic, but is accurate.
Yeah. Well, apologies for my froggier than normal voice. I actually still have COVID, so it is still a COVID.
Well, you're okay, right, Steve? I mean,
I'm okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm obviously more than okay. So I'm doing all right. But so I love this topic, and I love what everyone is doing with democratizing travel. At StayOpen, we create pod hotel communities for digital nomads and travelers in repurposed buildings with a blockchain rewards program called StayPass NFTs. We've also set up a nonprofit DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization called StayDAO, where we're setting aside 20% of all of our NFT proceeds to seed fund what we believe is the first nonprofit DAO specifically focused on helping underhoused and unhoused people. Even before COVID, we saw a couple large problems. The first big problem was there's a lot of empty office space in retail space. We actually saw more available retail space starting to pop up pre-COVID, and then COVID accelerated the trend of changing dynamics in retail and really accelerated the trend of changing dynamics in office space. So there's an interesting statistic I heard. There's going to be 900 million square feet of office space coming available in the United States alone by 2025. That's all of Manhattan in terms of space, right? The other big trend that we saw is this emergence of a digital nomad. You know, before COVID, if a college graduate told their parents, I'm going to be a digital nomad, most parents would say, oh, so you're unemployed surfing on the beach in Costa Rica? Whereas if a college grad today said that to their parents, they would say, that's amazing. What high-powered Web3 startup tech company are you working for? And that's awesome that you get to live, just come and visit me a few times when you're traveling and working wherever you're working. And what we're doing is we're marrying these two phenomena. There's a bunch of empty space for accommodations and even medium term residential. And that's one of our biggest problems. Where do people stay? Affordability. There's not enough space. And I look at it and I'm saying, am I the only one that sees all this empty space everywhere, all over the world? And on the other hand, you have these digital nomads, which is a new breed. They don't want to stay in traditional hotels. Traditional hotels kind of suck. They're still expensive. Airbnb is a good solution, but it does tend to be inconsistent, and you're not going to connect or meet people. You're not going to collaborate. You're not going to go on adventures together. So as was pointed out a little bit earlier in the call by Fred, we looked at hotels and hostels and empty space like Uber looked at taxi cabs 15 years ago and said, wait a second, why hasn't anyone changed the general concept of a hostel? And we don't like that word because it's so negative. We're going to come up with our own verb. We don't know what it is yet, or the world will. And we said, there's a bunch of space and there's a bunch of people that have the freedom and mobility to move around. Let's match those two together, create a platform, and then let's reward those people with, instead of your Bonvoy rewards points, which are actually non-transferable, which are just locked to you, let's actually come up with technology utilizing blockchain to reward people and allow them to use those rewards, gift those rewards, sell those rewards, collaborate with people like Pingtada with those rewards, and find ways to collaborate to be more efficient with space versus the other way, which real estate's the most inefficient business there is. Space is usually empty. It's terrible for the environment. So we've got a lot of things to work on and a lot of opportunities.
It's interesting, and doing a little prep for today. I mean, your background is in real estate and a lot of traditional, you know, so looking at someone might see StayOpen or StayDAO and think, oh, you know, he's a Web3 or, you know, but you are looking at traditional brick and mortar spaces and how do you facilitate their use and their repurposing, which is really fascinating. Now, but talking to both of you, you are, in theory, the would-be disruptors, right? We have this dichotomy. We think disrupt or be disrupted. You're working in the hospitality space. What are the challenges facing startups? And I don't like to think of it, at Venturefield, we don't think of it as disrupt or be disrupted. We think of it as collaboration to redefine what the future of an industry looks like. But what are the challenges facing folks like you who are trying to rethink and redefine what hospitality is and how it's transacted?
I guess that'll be me again. Oh, there you go.
First last time.
So I think there's, for us, because by nature, hospitality requires at the end of the day, usually some form of real estate, some form of property or space. And that tends to be the slowest industry to adopt technological change. It's very homogenous. It's been done the same way forever. So, you know, even just the way large hotels are built today, it's very similar to how things were done 50 years ago from a tech stack perspective and from financial modeling and from data. It's still so old school. And then when you have innovators like us come along and say, we have interesting technology, or we're going to take your four walls and turn it into something, I have to come into a meeting with a large REIT or a family office and say, I know you have this great shopping mall or this awesome office building, and I know you think it's worth so much money, but by the way, it's been empty for 4 years. And, you know, what do you think is going to change in the next 5 years that's going to fill it up? You think Apple is going to come knocking at your door to open another retail location, or you think another Google is going to come falling from the sky to take up 500,000 square feet? that world has changed, and convincing a very ingrained industry that they must embrace change with technology and new business models is our biggest challenge. And then finding the money to fuel that, that's also a challenge, is someone has to believe in that. No one disagrees with that there's a problem and this is a very good solution. So the challenge as a founder is kind of getting that message and finding that Goldilocks sort of opportunity that this is going to fit.
And that's such a great point. I mean, what we see when we speak with a lot of our clients, it's not usually either a product, service, or tech or business model solution, but oftentimes for an industry like this, that it is at a point of transition, it is a mix of all three, right? Redefining the product, rethinking the business model. Alana, now I'm going to throw that question to you. What are the challenges facing organizations like Pintata in you are creating a marketplace that in a space that didn't exist before, amongst a population who, we heard Kevin talking before about designing for his dad, right? Amongst a population who they might not want to own room night tokens, right? I just want to get my kids' spring break booked. So how do you overcome those challenges, and where do you see the opportunities?
Thanks, Vanessa. There is so much about the hospitality industry that resembles what Steve articulated about real estate, right? So we talk with so many hotels, and we have so many big hotel company names that are coming on the platform. They're being onboarded as we speak, and they're going to be unveiled soon as new destinations. But throughout those conversations, we learned of some of the apprehensions that they may have. And one of them, because the tokenization enables us to really combine and bring together those two value propositions of flexibility with the non-refundable price, which today in the binary model, it's not possible, right? And how is this possible that we enable people to swap or sell their reservation in our marketplace? So some hotel partners or prospects, they have a hesitation due to, I would say, a theoretical risk or perception of losing control of their inventory.
Yeah.
Right, through secondary channels. But it's not we try to show it's not really a loss of control, because they get their payment no matter what the moment those tokens get sold, right? Their revenue is guaranteed irrespective of what happens to the token in the secondary market, right? So that's one challenge that I think has taken us more time to educate some of prospective partners, but I would say we've been very reassured by the kind of response and adherence and adoption of our platform on the B2B side by hotels, which hopefully it's going to be visible to the public soon. On the consumer side, this is really a good point. On the traveler side, we did everything for the travelers not to have to develop or build a new user behavior. So the experience at Pintata resembles very much from a user journey perspective in some aspects what it would be like to really book a reservation in another typical site, with the exception that we made it so much better because we give the traveler the ability to 3D tour and immerse him or herself in the amenities of the hotel, fall in love with the hotel, visit different room categories, quantify if that room upgrade opportunity is really worth it, right? Which hotels, by the way, love it because it gives them a lot of opportunity for, upsell. But it really makes the traveler reassured with respect to what he or she will find. And I'm sure you've all been there. I've been there of booking vacations that looks like something special online. And then you open that door, you're like, oh, not quite what it looked like, right? A little different. So we solved that problem. So the traveler really doesn't see, let's call it how the sausage is made, right? Which is the fact that each room night combination at each specific hotel becomes a unique room night token. They don't see this. They still own the rights through the token to use that room at that specific night at that specific hotel. and they just know they have the benefit to swap or sell that reservation should their plans change, which is something that today, if they pay non-refundable, they don't have.
Right. And you've made, from a branding perspective, I will say it is like a delight. I mean, it's like a very approachable brand. You know, for a lot of people, when they hear tokenization, if they're not active in the space, it can be very intimidating. But we've shared some things on social media. So for folks in the audience, if you haven't seen, go to Pintada's site, Google Pintada, or follow us on social, and you can see some of the imagery just around the room night tokens themselves, putting a lot of storytelling into them, and making it actually like quite an engaging experience. So
Thank you.
Go ahead.
What's interesting is up until recently, we kept being asked by a lot of investors, particularly Web3 VCs, and even to this day, some people have asked us, why aren't you making StayOpen a Web3 only hotel where you could only stay if you have an NFT or buy a Stay token? And I've said, why would I do that? I mean, isn't the whole point of the Web3 movement to be inclusive, to bring as many people onto a platform versus kind of put people in a bubble? And we do have a high percentage of people that are Web3 forward staying at our properties now. So we're building, and we get to test some product tools, flows, our Stay Pass NFT with a user group that likes the product, but you never want to alienate someone. You always want to make everyone feel comfortable, and then you want to bring more people in versus make it like, oh, only the cool kids know about Web3. That to me is like counter to what this movement is. And I think we're now seeing that. We're seeing humility after this downturn of people saying, wait a second, this is great technology with great utility that could actually onboard the masses versus keep it very niche for a select group of people.
I so agree with that. If I may just build on that, another fear that we sense when talking to people is it's not going to speak to my current customers. My current guests are Gen Xers, right? So we have the user experience that is not alienating at all. And to your initial point, Vanessa, about creating something that is so complementary, this is entirely, even though it's perceived as a disruptor, the truth is we are reaching new audiences, bringing hotels new segments that they wouldn't reach otherwise normally by providing that experience and that mode of purchase with that flexibility. And they don't have to commit to selling. Pintada is a channel like other channel, right? And we only get paid for the rooms that we procure. So it's not really in any way disruptive. I would call it, it's such a great evolutionary layer that can be added to existing business models. It's much more how we function.
So I want to ask this question, but I think you've both touched on it already a bit, which is then, what's next for you in terms of how will you scale? And what you're both talking about is so resonant with me. Steve, our team is fully distributed, fully remote, and it's not uncommon that they are not only working from their home offices, they are literally working from wherever in the country they need to be at any given moment. So, you have that audience there, regardless of what their relationship is to Web3 or NFTs or DAOs. And then Ilana, the same. I mean, you have people who want flexibility, but how do you scale? And where are you in that process? And what do you see in the next 6, 12, 18 months in terms of enabling you to reach these new customers you're talking about? I'm not going to assign this to one or the other. You guys are going to have to duke it out.
I'll take off. Sorry. Yeah. So in terms of scaling real estate, it's, we're a tech brand. We're the new Web3 version of a Hilton Hyatt, where we work with real estate owners to operate and manage their properties. So in terms of scale, there's a lot, as I pointed out, there's a lot of available inventory. So scaling is getting in front of real estate investment trust owners that are actually saying, I don't have a tenant, and we could actually prove to them that they will actually make more money with StayOpen operating their property than even if they had a tenant pre-COVID. So they will do better than they even thought they would. And they don't even have a choice right now. So we're kind of like, well, better than zero is still better. And then in terms of demand, we're rolling out our NFT membership program at the end of the summer, which is also going to help prove pre-demand. That we have so many people telling us and say, Steve, I wish there was a StayOpen in not just Venice Beach. We want one in Miami and in Austin and in Brooklyn and in Denver. And if there was like 4 or 5 of these all over where I'd like to go, like, do you have a membership program? Can I just pay one fee and get to pop around from place to place and almost create this digital nomad timeshare like sort of derivative use ownership? In our NFT memberships, right now they give a 15% discount and you get a free stay for every 10 stays in the form of a token that you can sell or gift or use. So we're trying to create a mini but internal marketplace for now for StayOpen. But that also helps prove demand, showing that as we start selling our NFT memberships, we're going to prove out that there's pre-demand to help go to these large owners and say, I have a lot of people that want to stay in Denver. Just give us a 20,000 square foot office building that we could turn into 200 beds. And then you've got customers.
Yeah. Ilana, do you want to?
Happy to in a few minutes because I'm seeing the time count here. So from our perspective on the B2B front, we're also doing very well. I think we're on track. We're on track to reach about 25 different hotels by the end of the summer on the platform. So that's going really well. On the traveler side, B2C acquisition is always something that requires a lot of thinking. And we really covered a lot of the bases. So first of all, we built a product that is intrinsically viral. There are so many viral hooks in the Pintada experience. You will be able to very soon poll your friends about which properties you want to go to if you're going together. If it's a bachelorette party, okay, girls, this room or that room. You have some sort of memory card that is going to be an NFT that you can customize with your memories of that trip and share with your friends and family, which is a great tool of viral marketing. So that's the first layer. Then we have all the organic presence across social media. And then we're adding the pay very soon because just for context, we launched about like 8 weeks ago, barely. So we're very, very new still, and we are starting to learn how to scale. But I would say your point about creative is actually one advice that I would give to startups. I've seen so many startups start spending money on acquisitions before actually nailing their creative or positioning. And they just throw money, it's money wasted. So we actually developed this very kind of creative, provocative, and different campaign that really draws attention based on an insight that we had in real life, which is people coming to us and going like, what the heck's Pintada? So you're going to start seeing this everywhere. We used it as a hook and to really draw people in. And the feedback so far has been very, very positive.
So we have about 2 minutes left, and we have great questions coming in from the audience. So I'm actually going to bounce the questions, one to each of you, to close us out. Steve, this is a question for you. Blockchain, NFT, DAO, these are all terms that seem to frighten traditional legacy companies, or at least that is the perception, right? How do you demystify Web3 tech and language to make risk-averse behemoths more open to change? That is the question from the audience.
Yeah, it's a big one. I do this. I mean, explaining people in my circle, like my wife, how do you explain this to a 10-year-old as well? So, I'll answer specifically with those 3 or those couple elements. To me, an NFT is, for purposes of travel, it's a unique membership card that's digital. So, and you can move it around, you can sell it, you can gift it, but there's only one that you can move around, but it's just a membership card that has attributes, whatever attributes you want associated with it. So that's the kind of, in terms of blockchain, it's really a language. It's kind of like accounting. So I used to be a forensic accountant. So like journal entries and general ledgers, and how do you describe the language of numbers or numbers moving? That's all blockchain is. It's a way to break apart and piece together transactions moving to kind of keep it secure, where you scramble it up, you put it back together, and then it's secure. So that's kind of the blockchain. And a DAO is really just a company like any other company, but it's governed using online tools. So instead of you having like an operating agreement that you have to write and say shareholders have to get together and vote, and you have to send in your vote and get together. You actually just do it all online, and you just write out what the rules are, and then whoever governs this stuff online can change those rules as well. I'll stop there, but that's the simple.
I'm going to tip up my crib sheet using your explanations, because it is true. A little bit of it is just demystifying all the language and helping people contextualize it. The last question is a question from the audience. It's for Ilana. As a fast-moving startup in the travel space, and I would say also one whose business model is dependent upon adoption by traditional players in the space, how do you navigate working with companies and partners who might not be moving as fast as you are?
Look, it's a really good question. On the hotel side, even though it's not visible, it's moving faster than we thought. We're tracking, and partnerships, big partnerships with the right brands. That's going to be a very strong fundamental of our growth and scaling. It's going to be a big pillar. There are a number of brands we're talking to that we are very complementary with. And Steve, we should definitely talk. You mentioned this before, on top of everything, on top of others. But partnerships are going to be key. They don't all go, move on in the same pace. We understand that, and we have parallel efforts in the meantime. But because we're still very early, none of that has become a bottleneck yet, and probably won't, because we're starting to really open all these doors pretty early in the game.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for your time today. This was a really fun and fascinating conversation. Thanks to everyone who joined us across Philo, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. If you missed today's session, or you're just catching the end, you can go back to any of those platforms for the recording and check our podcast out in a couple of weeks, where you'll be able to catch our 2 panels as an episode of the Venture Fuel Visionaries, which you can find anywhere that you podcast. Regardless of how you're traveling this summer, whether it's using Southwest Airlines, Web3, or NFTs, we hope that everyone has a great summer, and we'll see you again next month. Take care.